of the nation and the world. Now, for this year is particularly very, very important year, because this is where we review our curriculum, and the impact of whatever that we do this year will actually be felt only when the graduates graduate in 2024 or 2025 at that point in time. So we want to take this opportunity to really sort of not just jumpstart, but quantum leap as far as the curriculum is concerned, with a view of looking at the various graduate attributes that's required, for the future, but also to make sure that they are more adaptive, more agile as you move into the future workspace. Lastly, I would like also to take this opportunity to thank the Industry Relations Division, Department of Higher Education Malaysia, and the Committee of Deputy Vice Chancellors of Industry and Community Networks for supporting and sponsoring this much-awaited forum, and also to the University of Malaya's team under DVC PNI, as well as the PNC Jaringan Industri and Masyarakat, JIM, for the dedicated organization. And we hope that you'll have an enjoyable and productive session this afternoon. With that, wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Dato'. Ladies and gentlemen, as Dato' has mentioned, this forum is curated by the Office of the Associate Vice Chancellor of Industry and Community Networks, or as we call it, JIM, Jaringan Industri and Masyarakat. As such, it is my honor to invite Professor Dr. Rafina Yasmin Othman, the Associate Vice Chancellor of Industry and Community Networks, and the coordinator for the forum, to give her speech.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Very good afternoon. Thank you very much. Actually, this one we intended for Prof. Dr. Imran to give a speech, but he felt that maybe I could just say a few words instead. I think Dr. VC has put the context of this meeting appropriately in terms of why universities need to be more interactive with our stakeholders, and how we need to learn as much as possible and how to prepare our graduates for the future. So it just remains for me, on behalf of the Central Region Cluster of the Committee of Deputy Vice Chancellors, Industry and Community Networks. It's a mouthful. The Malay acronym is even more, JKTTNC JIM. That's our acronym. But it's a really important grouping, and I really welcome all the members who are here today from the 20 public universities that make up the committee, especially our long-standing chair. I think we just had a changeover, but Prof. Renu, who has really driven this committee, and Prof. Imran from Prof. Renu is from UPM, Prof. Imran from UKM, who is chairing the Central Region Committee. So this event is part of a series of industry university engagement series curated by public universities under this committee. And the main aim is to promote, strategize, and implement best practices for industry academia engagement. So today's forum, we focus on industry input. So as you notice, the panel is all industry. We only have a moderator from the university. That is really on purpose because we feel we want really to have a clear, unfettered or unbiased feedback from industry on this very important topic as we try and grapple with graduate employability and graduate readiness for our universities. So I'm not going to say anything more about the gig economy forum, except that this is a statistic I got. 55 million people in the US are gig workers. That's more than 35% of the workforce. And in Malaysia, the number of self-employed individuals has grown by 31%, and a growth figure that surpassed the conventional workforce according to EPF. And just to share with you, this idea of there are issues with something like the gig economy came up with an amazing talk given by Datuk Sharil, who was then the CEO of EPF, under the CEO faculty program, which is a program which brings top-level CEO into universities on an adjunct position. So he's an adjunct professor here. He spent 20 hours last year giving us talks, lectures, and whatsoever. And in one of those talks, he really voiced the concern of EPF on the structure of the gig economy worldwide. And so I think that's one of the things that triggered us a little bit to talk about it. For more recently, a minister in the current government also mentioned that maybe the gig economy is the answer to graduate unemployment, which now has risen apparently to such alarming numbers. But is it really the answer? We'd like to also know. So I won't say any more except that I'd like to thank Jojo and actually to Dr. Arham, who couldn't be here today, so he sends his apologies. Dr. Arham is the director of the Industry Relations Division in KPT, who has been very supportive of us. Thank you for allowing to curate this forum under the Committee of Public Universities, and specifically to Central Region members, UKM, UPM, UITM, USIM, and UPNM, all of whom are represented here today. And a special thanks, of course, to our industry panelists who have given us the available time to share their expert inputs, to our media partners, EFM, Asia Research News, also to Digital News Asia, who are here today, and The Edge, who I hope will give us some mention. The Edge, and The Edge also triggered this idea because one of our panelists actually wrote a really good article, really questioning really also the support mechanism for gig economy workers in Malaysia. And most importantly, to welcome to and thank you very much for being here today. On that note, I'd like to hand over back to the MC, and we can start to hear the panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prof, for the teaser of the forum. We now begin with inviting the panelists to the stage. We begin with the moderator for this session, Professor Dr. Evelyn Chamala from the Faculty of Economics and Administration, Mr. Robert Banatello, CEO of EUM-CCI, Mr. Darzi Nur Halim, Director of the Sharing Economy Ecosystem Division, MDAC, Mr. Sharizan Abdul Latif, Head of Campus Initiative Pitch and Equity Crowdfunding, and Watchtower and Friends Accelerator. That's another mouthful. Ms. Shariza Dato Abdul Ghani, co-founder.
These people are not fully employed. All the people that on paper are employed, they're not fully employed. They're partially employed, and that is a problem. The advent, for example, of connectivity, e-commerce in Indonesia has dramatically changed the retail sector. And a lot of people have lost jobs. So the gig economy in Indonesia is something different, for example, than what it is in Singapore. Singapore, you have a number of very skilled professionals who play with gig economy because they take a personal advantage out of it. They make more money, they have more choice, they have more freedom. They have much better quality of life sometimes. You know, they decide to devote their attention to other things in life, and they become gig workers because of choice. So it's important to have this distinction, because I saw other questions, the questions that you have suggested. You know, how should the academia and universities deal with students in view of them becoming gig workers? This distinction will help us answering that question.
Thank you. Before we move on to the implications of the gig economy for the higher education, which is at the heart of all of us sitting here, I'd just like to get some views on the employee's perspective. Shireen, if I could just ask you a bit, will companies, I mean, you deal with gig workers, so will companies, or you engage in their services, or you channel their services, do you think companies would actually value years of working experience or the number of gigs? And we also notice in the case of Asia Pacific, as Padma has cited a report, 84% of talent managers in Asia Pacific prefer gig workers vis-a-vis US, which is only about 47%. Yeah. So can you just give me some insights into what employers look for?
Yeah. Thank you. It's a value proposition for both the gig and the companies. I think with the trend that we are looking at, The days of talent being in the company for many years is over. People go in, they do certain things, and then they move on and they go on to other sort of projects or other companies, right? So we have to face that as a reality. There will be companies that require permanent workers because of the nature of their business. Manufacturing, for example. But I'll give you an example of a manufacturing that does the gig work in a very innovative way. So the value proposition for companies is that if I don't have that talent in my organization, and that talent only works on demand, does that mean I lose that skill and that expertise? Certainly not, right? And some companies will have different jobs that requires only project teams. 6 months and you're done. They don't have a position, a full-time position for that particular talent. So then it's a cost efficiency sort of answer to companies. It's also the fact that if I don't have that talent in my organization, I can acquire them on a rent basis. So if you can rent our homes, we can rent our cars, we can certainly rent talent. And really the trust and the element around, renting your home, renting your car, renting your talent is the same thing. It's how you then design the processes that then leverages on that opportunity rather than saying, I can't do this. And you're missing out on a whole bunch of very highly talented and highly qualified people who work on demand. That's already a reality, right? So that it's a choice that companies make. And from discussing and engaging with a lot of companies, they know that is the reality now. And they like that balance. I have a number of people that work full-time for me. I need to because I have to run operations. But for certain specific type work, it's project-based and they need it for a certain amount of time, they do it. I'll go back to the manufacturing example. Carex, they make condoms, right? So they want to sort of reduce the number of foreign workers in their operations. So what they do is they work with the community. These are women who don't work. So between the ladies who, the mothers who send their children in the morning, and by the time they pick them up in the afternoon, there's a block of time that they can do stuff. So what they do is they go to Carex and they pack the condoms. And you get paid based on the boxes that you pack, right? So it's a win-win for them. The Carex in the community, they work with moms who need the extra income. And, they reduce their dependency on foreign workers. So you really need to think of very innovative ways on how you engage your talent in various ways of how you actually get work done. It doesn't necessarily mean it's permanent full-time workers that needs to be part of your workforce, or all of your workforce. Sorry.
So I understand it that it's basically project-based work. It's cost-efficient for the firm. But looking at it from the other perspective, from the individual's perspective, sometimes you need some amount of discipline. In the sense to be relevant to the workplace, because gig work is very competitive out there. Sharizan, what do you think about stability and mentorship, which could be lacking for gig workers, looking at it from the individual side,
Well, I guess as one person who has been doing gig work since God knows when, I might share some of the things that I've done personally, right? So I think when you're out there in the gig economy, right, the responsibility of improving yourself falls to yourself. So you develop your own career path, you develop your own baseline reputation that you want to be, that you want to present out to the marketplace, right? And then that reputation snowballs, you see. The more you go out there, the more you present yourself, the more you apply yourself to this industry, right? The more people get to know you, the more people understand the outcome of your work. And the higher value people would put, or businesses would put, into what you can accomplish, you see. So that's different from how talents are being managed within an organization. So when you're out there independent, it's up to you to improve yourself, to add on to your knowledge, and to better your output in terms of the industry.
So I guess it goes back to this issue of being relevant, making yourself relevant to actually get some gig work done. Otherwise, you have to compete with the others, yeah? So because they lose out on mentorship as traditional employees would, yeah? In some sense, yeah.
Well, I wouldn't say they lose out.
Yeah.
But you have to actively seek those mentors out. That's what I do on an ongoing basis. I actually approach people to become my mentor, you see. And you know, Sam is one of my mentors. He teaches me a lot about what what crowdfunding is, and I had to keep up with the learning that he has done over the years, you see. So.
Okay, coming to this issue of project-based tasks, Padma, if I could just ask you, why is it that Asia-Pacific talent managers have a much higher preference for these gig workers relative to the US, let's say, besides cost consideration, efficiency, specialized skills like you have mentioned, yeah?
I think, I think that the problem is, it could be because of language. I guess when you refer to Asia Pacific, I think they're specifically referring to countries like Singapore, Malaysia, not so much the region, the other countries in the region, because I think most of us already speak in English, and well, like it or not, it is more cost effective, right? Because the wages are still low, and yeah, actually that I would feel is one of the top reasons, and maybe skill, because like Roberto had said earlier, a lot of quite a number of skilled workers are based in like countries like Singapore, so you'd see that to be quite a an opportunity for them to seek out these workers on a project basis, right? That would be my take on why, because the report didn't exactly cite why, the reason.
Roberto, if I could just pose a question on this issue of gig economy stifling entrepreneurship. On one hand, we think, the gig economy allows you to harness your harness your skills of the individual. But there are also counter arguments that some gigs have stifled new startups. Yeah. What would you think about that, based on your experience dealing with big EU companies? Yeah.
Okay, let me just go back a second, if I may. Employers are, I wrote it down, opportunists. Okay. And I'm running a company, and you give me the choice to have everybody hired